Welcome back to Producing Innovation. I'm Michael Counts, and this episode is part 2 of my conversation with Stacy Spikes, founder of MoviePass, which is honestly one of the best real-world case studies I know: persistence, reinvention, and what it actually costs to build something that changes culture. If you've seen the HBO documentary MoviePass, Movie Crash, you already know. The intrigue and the drama are real. But what I wanted to do in this follow-up is go deeper on the part that matters most to builders: how you come back, how you pivot when the world changes, and what it feels like to rebuild after losing everything, and then to somehow get your company back. We talk about where MoviePass is today, their new product Mogul, what's changed in theaters and consumer behavior, and where the company is headed. If you're building anything, a company, creative career, a new chapter, this is the long-form story you won't get on social media. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Producing Innovation. I'm Michael Counts, and this episode is part 2 of the episode with Stacy Spikes, founder of MoviePass, among many, many other things, as you know from listening to the first episode. This is a follow-up, which is, I think, a huge opportunity to really see a story in long form, I guess, and to understand the stages. In part 1, we talked about, the 10 years that got Stacy to the point of MoviePass being open and up and running, and then becoming this sort of national sensation, and then the crash of that in the wake of Stacy leaving and these other people taking over, and then the incredible story of Stacy getting the company back. This has all been now made even more famous by the HBO documentary MoviePass, Movie Crash, which, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's awesome, and you really get a level of detail that, some of which we'll cover here, some of which is just the backstory, the intrigue, the drama of it all, as a documentary would show, is quite compelling. So I highly recommend that. And then with that, I'd love to say, well, one, Stacy, thank you for coming back on Producing Innovation. And boy, is your story one of persistence and endurance. And the last episode we said, I was like, entrepreneurship isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And we were both kind of like, well, it's actually both. You're like sprinting forever. So yeah, man, just wonderful to see you again. Wonderful to follow your story. And I just love to jump into it, man. Wherever you want to go is where we'll go, but I just love to turn it to you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's so good to see you again, and a fellow traveler on this mad world of entrepreneurship. So, yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
No. So, I mean, maybe an interesting place to start might be everyone knows the story of MoviePass. It was such a thing in its moment. Where is it today? What's the state of it, and maybe how did you get it back? What was the impetus there, and where is it today? And then, again, just take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah. So, it's, some people probably know it was, Hame, who was my co-founder, and I kind of dragged this sled for 5 years, and we eventually had an exit and exited to a private equity group, and it took off, and everybody was like, this is the fastest growing company. And one of the things that was really tricky about it was the price that they set was just too low. It was below market. It wasn't realistic. And we kept saying, hey guys, this price isn't sustainable. You need a higher price point. And they're like, no, we know what we're doing. As the movie goes, went bankrupt in under 9 months. With Hame and I, we lost everything. We had a complete wipeout. It wasn't a cash deal. It was a stock deal. And so we couldn't unload our stock till after 12 months. They went bankrupt in 9. So the COVID hits, and we know everybody, the future prediction was we were all going to just do Zoom. We were going to ride Peloton bikes in our homes, and we were never going outside and never going to movie theaters ever again. And so MoviePass went up for sale during that period. And right at the end of COVID, I bought the company out of bankruptcy for an insanely low amount of money, and then relaunched it in 2023. And in 23 and 24, we basically turned a profit and made the company profitable with some tweaks. And then at the end of 24, something interesting happened to compete. The AMC and the Regals of the world added something that we knew we couldn't do. We're all kind of playing at a 2D level. They then added IMAX and premium format, but didn't increase the price. And it was like, well, we know they're offsetting any losses with popcorn and soda, and we just don't have the infrastructure to compete with that. So we looked at this fork in the road that we can still maintain that business, still run it, and still do great. But we need something in the way they have something to offset. We need another revenue stream. And
Hmm.
we looked at social, or we looked at gaming. And we decided social was a crowded space with Letterbox and Rotten Tomatoes and other bellwethers of your sentiment of what you think about a movie. But we saw no one was kind of doing what FanDuel and DraftKings had done for the entertainment industry. And so
Right.
we set our sights on, let's create the first daily fantasy sports for Hollywood. And we combined it with a prediction market so that the term that a lot of people are using called speculative entertainment.
Hmm.
So under that bubble, we've got a DFS meets prediction market. So if FanDuel and Kalshi had a kid that likes movies, and it's called Mogul. And so Mogul, if you know a little bit about fantasy sports, you're a pretend general manager. And people say, is it gambling? And just to explain the difference, it's not considered gambling given that it is a skill of knowledge, not a skill of chance. So I'll explain what
Hmm.
that means. If a room full of people all paid an entry fee to play chess against each other based on their knowledge and their game capability, and the winner took the pot home. That's what DFS is. And so your
Hmm.
knowledge of sports, or your knowledge of entertainment in our case, is the thing that allows you that ability to, in sports, you're a general manager making a fictitious team that has only so many players, and how those players score in the real world is how your fantasy team scores. What we've done is said, you're a studio head. You get to pick real movies, real actors, and real directors, and how they perform in the real world is how your portfolio performs. And so that's the similarity. So it's a direct carbon of what fantasy sports is doing, but
Sure.
for fantasy Hollywood.
Wow. And is this in addition to movie theaters and ticketing? Because everyone thought no one's going to the movies. It certainly declined relative to what it was, I guess, pre-COVID. But is there still a business there?
Huge. So the numbers have climbed back almost up to 2019, which was the highest level ever.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we were off by 9 or 10% this year from that. So it's back, but there's something that's more powerful. A lot of the seniors have kind of decided to stay home, but
Hmm.
the bubble that we have is a much younger bubble overall. It used to look like a horseshoe. You would have teenagers, and then you have retirees, and in the middle, when people have kids, and they're either they go up through the dating process, and then they have children and fall off the grid, and then those kids start dropping them off at the mall on the weekend, and then when the kids go off to college, mom and dad start dating again, etc. So it's a horseshoe shape. Well, the older part hasn't come back the same way, but there's a bigger, younger part. And in the same way, there's the discovery of vinyl and the way IRL things are happening, the way you see Taylor Swift and Beyonce releasing movies in theaters because they want that community
Yep.
feeling.
Yeah.
It's were you there, not did you watch it? It's that's the new thing, and that's a whole new power. And I apologize, my dog is whimpering, and I'm
That's
just
okay.
gonna let her out of uh this chair she's in. All right. Sorry about that.
No.
Kids and
Yeah.
dogs.
Kids and dogs.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, that. That all makes so much sense. And I think it's thinking about the subject of this podcast, right? Like entrepreneurship, producing innovation, the overlap of creativity and business innovation and insight. If that's our theme, this is such a great example of pivoting, right? Of the world changing. There are certain I know that you've been focused a lot on AI since we were in touch last, since every business, every industry is thinking about that. Could you just, speak to that a little bit? Like, I think there's it's one of the parts that I think a lot of people struggle with. Either you're pivoting too soon and abandoning a good idea for, a new idea, or you're holding on too intensely to the old idea and not being willing to pivot. I think getting that right is so critical and also so difficult. You've been a master of that. It's not just puffery there. That's like, I've watched you if you listen to episode one, like Stacey like had the business, launched the business, closed the next day because there was a rug pull, and then they figured out another way with 90 days of cash left in the bank. Like that's a heroic story that any entrepreneur can listen to and be like, holy shit, like that's the way it happens. That's the real deal. But you've done that over and over and over and over again. Like, let's just get into that a little bit. Like, what is the key for you in seeing the opportunity of that pivot, but then like moving the business to it? I mean, is that about having more control now that you own it outright, or like what? Just like I'd love to drill into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think you're talking about the catching of waves and being too early or too late. Are you, when you dive in on it, you need to have it push you forward. So I see it a lot like surfing, right? And there's constant waves. And I think that, when you think of Amazon selling books, Amazon selling everything, Amazon doing video, Amazon delivering your packages with drones, that business never stood still, right? It's constantly evolving. And so all businesses must evolve. The golden rule is the only thing that doesn't change is change. Now, you might have a pizza stand and you do great pizza, and that pizza doesn't change. That's why you have a line down the block. But your audience no longer paying with cash and paying with their phones. So there's certain parts of businesses that sometimes have to adopt. And why are you going to turn people away? So the reason I'm thinking of this pizza analogy is I've watched this pizza shop. Nothing about how they made pizzas ever changed. But one of the first thing was, okay, people carry less cash. So they put an ATM machine outside. And then people stopped going to ATM machines, and then they put a smart chip and you're paying with your phone. What were they doing? Well, it was their cash in and cash out capability that they had to constantly update, not the pizza. So I think all businesses have to constantly evolve and constantly be chasing what the next wave is to stay relevant. And we're all now saying, okay, if my competitor is using AI, not increasing their overhead, but decision making's faster, processing is faster, research is faster. I'm going to lose if I don't keep up with that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think all businesses have to constantly do that. I saw a whole thing on the tennis shoe business, like the cushioning is getting so high that they're now making it that they're going to limit how much cushion you have because the runners they're literally springing, right? So, that space has constantly changed, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's the nature of all things. I don't think it looks different when you have to do it with a gun to your head,
Right.
but Apple has to do it. You saw what happened when BlackBerry laughed at Apple with no buttons. Like, are you kidding? It's all about the buttons. And then Steve Jobs comes out and says there's going to be no buttons. It's just touch. People were like, well, how am I going to type? And yet he saw the vision that the phone was going to be something that was about watching more than just an input device, right? So these market trends are constant, and you constantly look at banking ingesting, cryptocurrency. It's, constantly, you're always evolving. So I think it's just part of the business.
And, I mean, there's another part to that too, right? Which is, I mean, you mentioned timing, and you had an insight originally about people having a subscription service to the movie theaters, which makes so much sense on so many levels, and yet
Now it does.
now it does, right? Totally.
At the
Well,
time,
that's the
I
thing,
got
right?
laughed out of every room.
Yeah,
Every studio, every major movie theater was like, huh? They'd escort you to the parking lot and say, thanks a lot, bye. And they thought you were crazy. Like, why?
yeah. But it's like, yeah. So I mean, how do you? There's so many aspects, honestly, of entrepreneurship that I just feel like you and your story exemplifies. And I guess maybe it's, how does it feel to now have your company back after all of that drama, after all of that insanity, after all that loss? Yeah. How has that been? Was that just like a total, like revalidation immediately, or did it feel risky to you in taking it back and starting over?
I think it's definitely, so there's kind of three ways. There was, you get it back, but there is a lot of legacy debt from the fact that the guys who bought it burned a lot of people. So you have people who didn't know what Hame and I built. They came in at the point of this acquisition. So all they know is in 9 months, they got burned. They went to the movies a bunch and they lost their investments, they lost their money. So you had a bunch of people, more customers who knew that experience than the original brand, who people, it was quite a few thousand, but it was a loyal group, this really tight knit community who first started it. And so it was, how do you bring everybody along and say we're back under the original management? And really the playbook was, I went back and I read the biography on Steve Jobs. I went back and
Hmm.
read on Michael Dell. I went and back and read about the guys from Skype who bought their company back from Microsoft. And so I went back to these American stories of founders getting kicked out of their companies to come
Hmm.
back and redo it. Apple was this desktop or kind of laptop desktop company, and Steve Jobs come back, and that was his jam, right? But he comes back and he goes into the much more mobility of computing direction. And they had eyes on the phone, they had eyes on the tablet, they had eyes on, the iPod and all of that stuff. Once you got past that, it was, computing is going to get so small. I'm going to
Hmm.
have more computing power in a phone than what we took people to the moon on, right? And so in that shift, I saw a chance of telling a new chapter.
Hmm.
But first, I needed to prove that the core business was sound, and bought it back and did that. Now it's, well, what is the future of entertainment? It's not just that you go to movies, but what is the future of the experience? And kind of like that pizza stand, if I'm not really changing the fundamentals of sitting in a theater and experiencing content, because we're not in the content business,
Hmm.
how am I experiencing what we call movie going, not movie watching? Movie going is Walt Disney used to say, extend the experience. And what did they do? There's, you get when we were little kids, you would get the Snow White book. Then you go see the Snow White movie, and then you get Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs little lunchbox, and then you go to Disneyland, and they talked about extending the experience. And so now I'm going to go full circle on you. So Michael had this idea called Yellow Arrow, and he talked about these arrows that you would be able to point to them and there would be information. And what Michael was ahead of his time on was, he was using geolocation in a point in space that in a digital world, I could see that information. Well, you were playing with something that was 10 or 15 years ahead of where AR, what you were playing with was AR, but you had to interface it with the yellow arrow to unlock the data versus the phone now knows where it is but you were playing with a precursor to augmented reality. So that's what I'm saying is these waves and jumping on them and moving. True entrepreneurs, when you're all in a room, when I'm in a room with really big entrepreneurs, we all know how hard it is. And we also know sometimes you're at the right place at the right time, right? And it's life changing. Or you could just be a month early or 2 months too late. And this guy got, MySpace was early, but Facebook was on time, right?
Right.
And that's the thing about all of this. And there's this humbling true entrepreneurs. We sit in the room and tell war stories. Like I know your stories and you know my stories. And the timing on these things, you had much bigger, better ideas than I had. My stuff has been boring compared to the tech you were playing with. Seriously. And so it's just what you know, where you are, timing, catching the wave, market forces, raising capital, all of these dynamics. So I know I'm rambling, but yeah,
No, man, this is the point. It's to get deep in these conversations about what it takes and what's really going on behind the scenes on the inside and all of that. I was reminded of, I remember, when I used to pitch the ride and immersive entertainment, and people say like, well, what's immersive theater? What's immersive entertainment? What does it mean? And I'd give them examples of it. Then our original deck was like, well, there's immersive entertainment like going to Disneyland. There's immersive entertainment like the Venetian Hotel and Casino. There's immersive entertainment like the shows that I've made, and then some of the things we even experimented with AR, with sort of a theatrical narrative like out in the city, and then people get into escape rooms and all that stuff. And the thing that there's a book that I read, really as I was getting really into all this stuff and looking at like what are the cultural trends that are really driving this. And there's this book that two guys at Harvard did called Got Game, and basically what they said was their thesis was, and you may know it, but a listener may not be familiar, but it's like their idea was that so our parents' generation grew up watching television and movies, and that was passive. You're outside of it. You're a voyeur through this window into this world. You can't impact it, right? And then along come, when we were kids, video games, Atari and television, video game arcades, Asteroids, Pac-Man, the Pong, the very beginning of it
yeah,
all. But like games of skill, right? Games where you learn the rules and get good at them, and then you get better and better and better over time. Games where you get to game over and then start a new game and replay. And what they basically said was that this media experience is going to define this generation. They said it's going to change the world, because you're going to have a generation of people who grew up having an agency, the ability to impact what was happening, and not just an outside passive spectator, but like they're in it. So they're going to play video games, but they're also going to be more entrepreneurial. And they're also going to want entertainment where they get to participate. They're going to want not just watch TV, but like the growth of popular sports and gambling and betting in every form, but also just entertainment where there's not a clear outcome. Why is the
hmm
Super Bowl still as big as it is? Why has football grown as much as it has? Well, because that's not passive. You're watching that. Everyone is seeing it unfold in real time, live, and it's unpredictable. And then you have all the betting and all that stuff that allows you to participate. That if you know the game better, and now like this, what I'm seeing now from what you're describing in Mogul is that aspect entering movies, and it entered television a while ago, right? With Survivor and The Great Race and all these different reality platforms. And then in a way, like social media is even that, like we're all becoming content creators, but movies have been sort of walled off in a way because they're so expensive to make and all that. But I think that adding this participation component, right? Beyond just celebrity and all the things that where people like, we watch these celebrities as topics of, media and entertainment in that realm, but like actually how do you win off of it? How do I play the movies? How do I be a mogul? And I think that that is going to be immense. I think that is going to be an immense opportunity for you. Say more about that. Like, I mean, is that like, does that track with what your sense of it is? Uh,
Yeah. So one of the things why people never, so the Oscars is unpredictable, right? And it's the envelopes are sealed, and there's that moment that the cameras are on the 4 or 5 people, and the winner is right, and no one knows that moment. What we focused on was not so much the unknowing of an envelope. We said, can you, if I gave you a budget and you're going to pick horses and you have a cap, a salary cap compared to your friends, in the same way, now I'm going to show you a trend line. In the same way, no one ever thought a speech or something had the ability to gamify it, to gamify IR. And what we're doing is we're not, somebody knows the outcome of a movie, right? So you can cheat that. Somebody on set or the production, or does Darth Vader live or die? Somebody already knows that. So you can't do that. But the audience participation in it, no one knows. So here's the equivalent. The box office outcome, no one, it's too big of a thing to try and corrupt that, right? So not, it's, think of it like how many people are going to be in the stadium of this game
mhm,
more than what is the outcome of the game? What is the, which players are going to start? Which players are going to add the most points to the game? Like, so there's other factors that you can do with the movie industry. So what we focused on is, instead of the box office gross, because everyone would pick the biggest movies, we do the return on investment from a negative production cost to the revenue. So if I picked Wicked, and Wicked cost 200 million to make and made 400 million, but you picked, I don't know, I'm going to make this up because I don't know the numbers off my head, but you picked Sinners. Sinners cost 20 million to make, but it made $1 billion, right? So now you have a much higher ROI, and your actors and your directors participate in that ROI. And that's something no one knows what the outcome is going to be. I'll give you a perfect example. When Minecraft came out,
mhm,
everybody and their mother predicting the box office said Minecraft was going to bomb. And what happened was Jack Black goes on, and we see these memes when he says, I am Steve. And everyone was throwing their popcorn all over the theater, that theater managers had to say, stop throwing your popcorn in this movie because it takes too long to clean it up. What happened was the grosses went up because of fan participation. See,
mm,
that's how stocks work. When there's a critical mass that this is going to, that's how GameStop, ends up doing what it did. Sometimes stocks go up because people, even if the company is not performing well, people just say, I believe in this company. So it's the belief in the properties and the fan engagement that we want to turn movie going into a participatory sport that you can actually calculate the outcome. And that's what's different. What sports does is it's just what's happening on the field. What we do is what's happening in the stands.
right,
That's a
right.
difference.
And so how does it work with the like picking,
Sure.
like, are you picking celebrities in the same way that you're
Yeah.
picking
So,
players in
yep.
fantasy?
So here's the difference. When you're selecting an actor, you're selecting the actor just in that film. You're selecting Timothy Chalamet as Marty in Marty Supreme. You're not getting Timothy across the universe. You're getting him just in that property. So if you buy Timothy in Dune, is different than if you buy Timothy and Marty Supreme. If you buy Zendaya in Spider-Man, is different than Dune, is different than Challengers, is different than any other movie she's in. So what you're doing is you're buying the actor in the role, and the performance of the actor in the role is what you're benefiting off of, not them like a stock. You're not buying them like you're buying an open-ended stock. So how the movie performs, the actor is a fraction of that, and you're riding along that. And then we have what we call a hype index, which it takes the number of trailers, the number of social mentions, the number of what is social sentiment, and it takes all that together and it gives like a Billboard Top 100, so that your actor in that role is actually has a score, that if my actor's climbing the charts and is number one on the charts, and I bought them when they were fifth on the chart, but now they're number one, I also benefit, because we want people who can spot stars. We want people who can spot talent, because that's what a mogul has to be able to do. That mogul has to go, you know,
Yeah, totally.
that kid, right? And you got to be able
He's
to
got
pick that.
something, I don't know what it is, but
Right,
he's got something.
right, right.
Star
And there's
quality.
that's right. When Jacob, who's in, he was in Frankenstein and he's going to be in Wuthering Heights. Well, if you saw him in Saltburn, it's like, it was years ago, but if you're in the know, you're in the know. And so what we say is the old movie pass was about saving money. The new movie pass is about making money. And when you have an audience that is they know their stuff about movies, well, now here's a chance. If they pit their knowledge against others, they're able to make money off of that knowledge and to be able to read the market.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
it's funny, Stacy, that this is our last guest was Zoe Kalar, and she's the founder and CEO of We Are Eight, which is, it goes by Eight. It's this social media platform that's really big in Europe. It just launched in Denmark, became the top app in Denmark. And the hook is, and they're about to move into the US market. And their hook is that like Premiere, was it Premiere or Preview?
Pre-show, pre-show. Yeah.
Pre-show. So, right, like pre-show, it's a social media platform that basically splits ad revenue between the
With
company
yeah.
with the people. And so if you're watching ads or you're making content that benefits a company and becomes viral in its promotional affiliate way, you make money, and it's not insignificant. It's real money. And I think that we're moving into a time where that kind of monetization of attention and monetization of interest and alignment between consumers and products, that so many marketers have known for a long time. Like, we like ads that we like.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, a movie trailer is an ad for the movie, and we love to watch them, right? Like my kids will watch a movie trailer that they want, of a movie that they want to see, some like next big Marvel movie. They'll watch it 20 times, but it has to be about, the things that we care about with the people that we care about. And so it's just fascinating to me that as we're moving into this time where there's all of this. I mean, we know we're in a sea change. We're in a phase shift of everything. And AI is going to change employment and income, and all of these things are going to change the nature of what it is to work, what it is to have purpose, how we make our money, what can humans do well, and what can AI do much better than humans, and what is that? What has that change everything? I think these instances, as you're doing, where you can earn money from your interest in movies and your knowledge of those things. In Zoe's case, when you can earn money from, being on social media, promoting products that you like, but not just like for the tippy top of the YouTubers that have, 10 million subscribers, but like people that have, I mean, she's like, someone with 5,000 subscribers could easily make $5,000 a year just from doing what they do. And it's like, that's an interesting and compelling model. But it's just fascinating to me that, like, first two guests and first two entrepreneurs, it's like, that's where things are headed. It's a chaotic time, but certainly an exciting time.
Well, I think we're all getting out of the way of the consumer driving their own destiny. We're just tools. And what YouTube did was it made, Airbnb allowed you to make money. And that's why I think Tesla's making a very powerful pivot, where my car is going to be able to go drive people around while I'm sitting in the office working and make money. And what that passive income or the ability to control your own destiny is very, very powerful. It's a huge driver. Taking your second bedroom and turning it into revenue or your house when you're not there is huge. And so what we're saying is, okay, take your knowledge of movies and your knowledge of entertainment and make revenue with it. And that's
Hmm.
what we think is going to be a very powerful driver, but you need to base it on oracles that are not corruptible. So some of the polymarket and Kalshi things where how many times is someone going to say something in a speech? Well, now someone can set you up, right? They can trick that. But with the way we're setting up the the mogul universe is you can't, it's too hard to to trick it. It's not, it's you got to convince all of these people because it's based on attendance or sentiment. You got to convince all of these people to agree with you. And then if they do, then there's nothing to win because you convince them. You have to pay money to somehow convince them to do it. So it's
Yeah.
a much cleaner business.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Let's end with this, man, because I really always try and bring it back to like what's something that an entrepreneur, I feel like the audience for this show is entrepreneurs like us and who just, want to kind of commiserate, the stories and the challenges and the ups and the downs and all that. And then also young people who are just starting out who I think entrepreneurship is not only evergreen, it's like it's the biggest wave that's happening right now. Everyone is going to have to be entrepreneurial. And I know people who are saying that like the world of like go get a job with a big company and stay there for is like that is so long gone. And what it's going to take for people is to be entrepreneurial. So young people coming out of school, like they're scared of AI, but now if they can sort of shift their mindset, use the tools, interestingly. So I think that's who this is really for. I'd say to you, like on the other side of this incredible roller coaster adventure that you had with MoviePass, the early, the 5 years before you got the first investor, and then the high highs, and then this thing getting taken over, bought out, becoming this thing that everybody knew about. Yeah, I remember thinking like that moment when that happened, everybody had heard about MoviePass, everybody was talking about it, and then the crash, and then the sort of doldrums, and then the buying it back, and then the reinventing it. Like, what's a lesson that you took away from that, or something that kept you going that would be really useful, like the most useful thing for the younger you to hear and remember? If you could talk back to you at the beginning of your career, or somebody that's starting out now, like what was the big, the valuable lesson
Yeah.
that made it all in some way worth it?
People ask me if I could go back in time, would I warn myself or give myself information? And I don't think I would, because I think the mistakes, what we truly learn is the mistakes are the thing. You learn more from through the mistakes than you do through the successes. When it went right, you think you're really smart. When it went wrong, you realize there's stuff you need to learn. I heard a saying, God loves my defects, but the devil loves my assets. It's kind of like, because your ego is like, yeah, I did that. There's nothing for you to learn. There's no humility in that. And so the thing I would probably say is persistence prevails, right? It is most, you can be successful. Don't pay attention to the guy who wrote code when he was 19 and he's a billionaire and he's got 20 planes, and don't pay attention to that story. That's an accidental billionaire. That's right place, right time. That person's not more brilliant than you are. You got to think of most founders are successful on their third or fourth business in their 40s to 50s. So understand that you got to go through these ups and downs and twists and turns. And then that's where most people are going to be. And you can make a living and you can support your family. It's hard, but it's the freedom is wonderful. There's a saying that I love: the work is hard, but the pay is great. And the work meaning sleepless nights. And you and I have been on the phone when things went wrong. I gotten calls from you in hotel rooms when there were disasters, and
Yes, you did.
you've called me when you're like, dude, I'm watching MoviePass implode on television. Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, and then pitching ideas about new companies or new startups and building stuff in, Cuba, and gonna do a drive-in and indoor drive-in with cars. Like, I can tell people every single idea you've ever had. And the ones you run up the gauntlet and still will go to Times Square and go, Michael did that. And it's still there, right? And it changed how people experienced a city. You see, I go to Singapore, I go to Hong Kong, I go to other places, and now they're doing stuff that the ride did, turning a bus sideways. It's like, who would have thunk it? Making it into a theater. It's what genius. And so it's persistence prevails. And remember, it's the quality of your work, not the quantity of it. It's the craftsmanship. If you are a barista, you want people lined up down the block going, that guy's coffee and what he does with it and how he presents it, and how when you see, I'm going to tell you one movie that every person should watch, and this will help you understand what I'm saying. Euro Dreams of Sushi.
Mm-hmm.
And Euro Dreams
totally.
of Sushi is about the #1 Michelin sushi restaurant that has only 8 seats. And you got to watch how this guy makes sushi. And he makes it as though this person in front of him is the only person in the world, and this person is a king or a queen, and I'm going to make the best sushi for them ever. And when you see that kind of craftsmanship in something that the moment someone eats it, it's gone.
Yeah.
And yet you can't share it. You can't take a phone or a computer and say, hey, this is what I bought off this. No, this is food. And yet the wait list to sit at this guy's bar in one of those seats is like months long. And why? Because the craftsmanship to what he builds, that dedication, and you have to do that. You have to make it for you. Don't worry if it's big. Don't worry if it's successful. Make it the best product there is. Put your name on the sky with you made it so good. And that is one of the things. And I'll leave you with this. There was this moment where I got fired. And so what am I going to do after getting fired? I'm going to go to a movie, right? So next day I get up and I go to the movie, and I'm in the lobby, and I go to Regal Union Square, and it's 2, 3 in the afternoon. And I see 4 or 5 people pulling out MoviePass cards. Okay. And I go up and I sit down, and right between the seats, this young kid looks back, and I think he's at NYU or something. And he goes, hey, aren't you the founder of MoviePass? And I go, yeah. He goes, man, thank you. You changed my life. It was like I just got fired.
Yeah.
And yet this kid's talking about how he wants to be a filmmaker, and MoviePass changed his life and helped him really get to see more of the work and see it in theaters. And people coming up to you saying, I stopped going to the movie theater. You got me to go back. That's what I mean, that's all there is. You do something like that, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the greatest. I hope we contribute in some way, sharing these stories, sharing the ups and the downs, the hard-fought lessons, that encourages you to pursue it. And then you have that experience too, because I've had experiences like that where that these invisible tiny moments of evidence of impact and success and helping people or moving people or shifting someone's perspective, that's what it's all about. And that is I'm so glad that happened to you, especially on the day after what was apparently undoubtedly a tough moment. But Stacy, man, it's you're when I think of persistence, there's a very small group who I feel like really know, and you were in that group with special honorable mention, man. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with listeners who no doubt will benefit from all that you've shared and who you are. So thank you.
Thank you, man. I will see you soon on campus.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.